Hello. Welcome to the Alex Gem Experience, the ACE podcast, should I say. Right, let's dive into today's questions. But before we do so, ensure that you subscribe if you haven't done so yet and turn on notifications so you receive my weekly podcast, my weekly meditations, my weekly videos to help you or hopefully teaching you like how to be even more conscious, enlightened, peaceful, joyous, happy, content, and so on and so forth. So let's dive into today's questions. First question we have is, what's more important, thoughts or emotions? Sometimes I think if these are trick questions, but it's virtually impossible to answer that with any real conviction, to be honest with you, because as I'm sure you can understand, you need one to have the other. There's no darkness without light. There's no noise without silence, and so on and so forth. That's the best analogy I can come up with. But that's there is no such thing as one more important than the other, because firstly, there's a feedback loop between our thoughts and emotions. Our thoughts produce similar neurochemicals in the brain, as essentially similar feelings and emotions, and those emotions create new thoughts. So I'm going to do my best to answer it, because you need one to have the other, of course, like I just outlined. But, if we don't have thoughts, then we don't have feelings. If we don't have feelings, then we don't have thoughts. So there is that continuum, that feedback loop between the two. But in saying that, I mean, we do have 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day, most of which tend to be the same as the previous day, because we tend to do the same sorts of things on a daily basis. But in terms of emotions, now, for you to really remember things, I'm talking about more than just your semantic memory, like facts and logistics and hearing something and feeling like you can retain that information. You need to have some kind of like emotional connection or association to what you have learned, to help you learn it. So you need that kind of emotional pull, if you will, which is why emotions are so crucial and so important for long-term memory as well, but also for experience. Because what makes an experience memorable isn't the thoughts that we have necessarily, it's the emotions that we associate to them. That's also dependent upon our beliefs and perceptions, which again link to our thoughts. So you can see why this is so hard to answer. But I would say what happens is when we experience certain powerful emotions, certain powerful memories in the past, whether they're positive or negative by their way in which we've perceived them, we will hold on to memories and transfer it into our long-term memory if they have great emotional attachment to it, if they meant something significant to us. If something highly memorable, something really, like, say, sentimental, or something really visceral and powerful happened, that deeply ingrained that into our autonomic nervous system, into our subconscious, which means it would thereby influence our behaviors and our attitudes in the future, perhaps. So emotions can be seen as being exemplified through the body. Thoughts are the expression of the mind, and feelings are the expression of the body. So when we experience something so frequently, so it could be just memorizing something, for instance. If we have certain thoughts on a daily basis, I'm smart, I'm lucky, I'm useless, I'm unworthy, or I am worthy, or whatever the thoughts are. When you experience these repetitiously, it spurs and evokes certain emotions with us. Like I said from the offset of this podcast, when we think things, we emotionalize those same things. We have a similar emotion to those particular thoughts. So when this happens repetitiously over and over, the body learns to execute this information better than your mind, better than your conscious mind, which is only 5% of our daily wakefulness, okay? So your body starts to get used to and craves and becomes addicted to whatever you experience on a daily basis. So you could become addicted to the hormones of stress. You could become addicted to your anger, to your indignation. You could be addicted to your apprehension. You could be addicted to your fear. You're going to be addicted to your feeling of unworthiness or whatever it might be, yeah? And these emotions that we experience, or they could be elevated, more blissful emotions such as joy, gratitude, empowerment, and so on and so forth. Whatever you experience on a regular basis, you teach your body to enact it. So, say if a few years ago, let's use the example as me for convenience sake. Say if something really bad happened to me a few years ago. Let's say that I was dating someone, and say they cheated on me, right? And let's say that had such an emotional influence and impact upon me that what happens now, I do not have to visualize that scenario, that cheating situation when I found out about this sort of thing. I do not have to imagine that anymore. Just the very thought can trigger an experience or a similar experience. And not just that, because that experience is so ingrained and instilled within my unconscious, what happens is this. Say if I'm at work and a colleague, rather than sharing something with me that they should have done, for instance, goes behind my back and says something to my line manager or to my boss or whomever it might be, right? I might create and cultivate, if you will, that, I would say dormant, but it's not dormant because it's lurking in the background of my subconscious if that happens, right? And I would create and feel the same kind of emotions and therefore the same series of thoughts that I had day after day after day of reliving the fact that my ex-partner cheated on me, for instance. And just the very fact, it's got nothing to do, it could be totally different scenarios, totally different people, my colleague in this instance doing this. It could spur those kind of emotions and those series of thoughts, of maybe thoughts such as, maybe I'm not enough, I'm not good looking enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't make enough money, or whatever thoughts I had when I was cheated on then. It might spur those kind of thoughts by my colleague not talking, telling me how they feel. For instance, I'm not to be trusted, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. And those thoughts come up because that's how I've conditioned myself all those years, because of that very powerful event that has emotionally branded my brain, right? And this is how a lot of people live their lives, and this is what oftentimes leads to overreaction, and why people get very emotional. You don't quite understand why. You're like, what's going on? I took your pen. Sorry, it's only a pen. So that was just an only example that came to mind. That's what people look for, and we become addicted to those feelings of unworthiness or anxiety or depression or fear, whatever, of jealousy, whatever it might be, right? And that's how it all works. So I've gone off on a completely different tangent to an extent, but I thought it was pertinent for what we're talking about. So if I had to choose what's more important, I would go with emotions. Now, if the question read, what's more important, beliefs or emotions, I would find that a little bit harder. Because the fact that you've said it's a thought, well, we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. So what's more important, one thought or one emotion? If you asked me that was a good way. You should have asked me that. If you said what's more important, a thought or an emotion, then I would say an emotion is more profound, more influential than the thought. Okay? That's the best I got for you. So in saying that, I hope I answered your question. Let's move on to the next question. Oh, gosh. Here we go. What is reality? Okay. So, we have in terms of the five senses, we have our perceived reality in terms of matter and what we see and what we perceive to be reality. For instance, this is a perceived reality for you. You are listening to me talk. You can see all these things around me and da-da-da-da-da. That is our perceived reality. But is that reality? Not necessarily. According to the quantum field and quantum physics, which is more about paying attention to subatomic atoms and the smallest minute atoms and molecules. And when you break an atom down, it becomes energy. So small atoms, well, all atoms are small, but when you really look into atoms, they are mostly consist of space. and energy, which you can't see necessarily, not easily anyways. But that's more profound because the energy within a small atom is very like it appears and disappears. It doesn't react predictably. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at other structures, things that we connect with matter, for example, desks, tables, people, these sorts of things, when you look at them, they are more matter than energy. Okay? And according to the quantum field, if you look at how energy works in an atom, in people, in things, objects, and what have you around the universe, they actually can be broken down to they're all made up of atoms, and therefore they're all made up of energy. And so, explore this in your own time, because we could talk all day about quantum physics. But essentially what it's saying is that really it's all in the eyes of the observer. It's about what I'm seeing, okay, or what you are seeing in this instance. The moment you turn away and look away, you might even be hearing me, but who's to say that you are watching this on whatever screen you're looking at? So they're essentially saying whatever you place your attention on, that is what is reality in that moment. So if that's the case, and it's based upon what we see and the energy and the frequency of what we see, then what's to say that we can't create alternative realities? And this is what quantum physics is. There is unlimited potentiality. There is every single opportunity, every single thing that you can grasp, that you can conceive, is plausible in terms of the quantum model. It is plausible. So if we're looking at things from this perspective, you could say that reality is in the eyes of the beholder. So you could say that whatever you perceive is reality. For example, your brain, your unconscious cannot tell the difference between something that is happening in reality, for example, you listening to me right now, or something that you vividly imagined in your mind. And this is how people can shape and change the quality of their lives. Because a lot of people try to change the quality of their lives with their beliefs. But our beliefs are oftentimes devised by our references of the past. But if you're using the past to determine your future, then surely you're going to get the same kind of results. And isn't that madness? As Albert Einstein would say, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, perceiving in the same ways, yet expecting a different result. Why would you expect greater wealth, better health, better relationships, a change in fortune, if you're doing the same sort of things every single day? And this is what people secretly do. They expect to win the lottery, or to win a big bet, or to meet the love of their life just unexpectedly. When they do the same sort of things, they think in the same sort of ways, they feel things in a certain sort of ways, they behave in the same sort of ways, they have the same habits, they have the same attitudes, they have the same beliefs, they have the same perceptions, they have the same identity, and yet they expect something more significant to occur in their lives. It won't happen unless we cultivate it. And we can only cultivate and create massive change in our lives if we change our perceptions, if we become a different person, if we perceive anew, if we can mentally rehearse what we want in our lives. Okay? So, to kind of pull myself back in, you could say that reality, yes, is in the eyes of the beholder. Reality is not necessarily what we see. And reality can easily be whatever we imagine in the mind. And there are infinite possibilities out there, and it's almost like you can, just like you go into a candy store and you can choose whatever sweets you want, the same applies to the mind. You could literally close your eyes and imagine vividly whatever you wanted to imagine. Infinite potentialities to imagine things in your mind. And that could be you, because when you imagine something in your mind, the body reacts biologically, chemically, even genetically. The body reacts and changes. I'm referring to epigenetics here. So, for example, if I told you to imagine the best sex you've ever had in your life, that would create certain kind of images in your mind. Just a thought. I just asked you something. And those thoughts can trigger certain physical reactions. Right? And same thing if I said to you, imagine if there was um, not just to imagine it, but feel it. Imagine that it's genuinely happening, because there's a difference here. There's a difference between just conceiving something in terms of your imagination and genuinely believing in it and feeling it and embracing it. And that's completely different. And when we embrace these things, that's when it becomes real. That's when the body genuinely has been moved into that experience. And so, isn't that reality then? If the body, if the mind and body are connected and moving toward the same thing, what you're thinking, what you're imagining, how the body's responding chemically at a cellular level here, then who's to say that's not reality? I know. Quite deep. Deep indeed. But we'll leave it at that. Move on to the next question. Can analysing situations support or harm me? Can analysing situations support or harm you? Okay, so you're referring to the analytical mind here. You're referring to your neocortex, the newest addition to the brain, where our best capabilities lie. And especially in saying that, I'm referring to the frontal lobe, which is like the CEO, if you will, of the brain. The frontal lobe communicates with all different areas within the brain. The frontal lobe is responsible for sequencing, planning, imagining things, evaluating things, rationalizing things, thinking logically, being able to conceive a better future, being able to maintain your focus. The frontal lobe is the best part of the brain, if you will. The leader, however you want to, whatever synonym you want to use. And when we analyze, right? When we analyze situations, I would say you are activating something possibly very useful or something possibly very damaging. Okay? Because people sometimes utilize their analytical skills to review things, to dig in deeper, to zoom in on something, to be more specific, and all these sorts of things, which is a very important skill. I completely agree with that. The problem is people become so addicted to analyzing that they overanalyze. And therefore, they find it hard to shut off that part of the brain. And therefore, they're living, well, in the past, because they're constantly evaluating. They're living within their egoic mind. And therefore, that analyzing can knock you, if it's stressful. If you're analyzing something stressful, then you are conditioning yourself to live in fear. You are conditioning yourself to live in stress, in chronic stress. And we're not built to live in stress. And this is how all kinds of mental and physical illnesses and diseases can stem and grow. Not always, but in many instances, illnesses can manifest, develop, and worsen due to stress, which is a consequence of the analytical mind in overdrive. And when we're knocked out of homeostasis, that's when we're not in control anymore. That's when the hormones become addicted to the hormones of stress. We become addicted to the analytical mind, and we become addicted to our identification, our identity. And that could be extremely precarious for us because, like I said, we find it hard to switch off. It can compromise our immune system. It can negatively inhibit our sleep quality, which has all kinds of disastrous consequences for us. Over analyzing prevents us from being present, and therefore it's impossible to be peaceful if the analytical mind is switched on. Now, like I said, the analytical mind has its purposes and its strengths in maybe leading to all kinds of insights and preventing us from making mistakes in the future, or allowing us to reflect and review and make better decisions in the future. So it has its place, but if it gets out of control, like most things, if we become addicted to it, then that's when it can work against us, and it's almost impossible for us to become present and therefore peaceful and grateful and loving, all these really empowering, elevated emotions, experiencing them, if the analytical mind is switched on. Okay? So, again, this is another question that I can't necessarily answer because it's twofold. It's useful, but it can cause great harm. So I always perceive it as analyzing with a healthy perspective. So always have that kind of peaceful, relaxing feeling. Oh, okay, so I'm going to tell you about brainwave states. We have different brainwave states. There are three sides of the beta brainwave state. So you've got low beta, which is when you're learning something. So if you're reading something and you're learning something. You've got mid beta, which is when you are actively learning something. So some of you might be in mid beta right now, listening to me, learning, trying to remember things and all these sorts of really important things. And then you've got high beta when you are being extremely critical, really harsh with yourself. You're over-analyzing things. What did that person mean by that? Oh my God, I made a mistake. And you overthink situations. That's high beta. And when you think between 60 thoughts, or well, more than 60 thoughts per minute, especially when you're in high beta, which is not good. We don't want to be there. So it's kind of like analyzing situations can be mid beta, which is to an extent it has its place, but when it becomes high beta, that's when it becomes disastrous and really negative and consequential. So there are levels to these brainwave states and these states of being, if you will. That's what your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors are. What we call states of being, just your way of living and what's going on neurochemically, internally. And at a cellular level as well. That's what we mean by our state of being. So, yeah. Can analysing situations support or harm me? Both. Depends on the level in which it happens. But you can prevent, because what happens is, and I'll speak briefly about brain and heart coherence here. When you experience elated, joyful experiences, positive creative emotions such as joy, peace, gratefulness, appreciation, empowerment, confidence, invincibility. When you experience things along these lines, and you condition the brain to feel the brain and the body, the unconscious, to feel this way on a daily basis, then you perceive things much more optimistically. So studies have now shown scientifically here that optimists respond favorably to positive news and are less harmed and negatively impacted by negative news. Whereas pessimists and people who are highly cynical tend to react more severely to bad news. Like I said, that I gave you an example earlier about, if someone stole a pen from you, someone who's an optimist will go, oh, I can, that's not a big deal. It's just a pen. I can get tons of pens. It's relatively cheap. I didn't lose anything really. If we put it into perspective, that's how an optimist or someone who has more of a positive mindset might respond. Whereas someone who's negative is thinking, this always happens to me. Why would they steal my pen? What's wrong with me? Every bad things always happen to me. They did it on purpose. And they somehow make these associations and connections to things that happened in their past because they're living in the past, right? So negative thinkers, people who have fixed mindsets, are often people who are unable to overcome the pain of the past, and they're reliving their past and they're living within their egoic mind way too often and way too long. Okay? So, I forgot why I spoke about that, but there was some positive intention. Oh yeah, it was to say that sometimes we can spiral out of control and make things much more worse than they seem if we live in the past, if we are struggling to be present and conscious, and to put things into perspective. And that's why meditation is something that I literally add on to my YouTube channels on a weekly basis. I do my meditations. I help guide you through your meditations because meditating is so influential, so powerful for enabling us to have a healthy mindset, to make sure our brain and heart are operating synchronistically, helping us to achieve things and to really stimulate neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. We become more intelligent. We are able to make better changes and more changes in our lives, and acquire better health and better mental health as well as physical health, and create better genes, better functioning genes, and upregulate healthy genes and supportive, empowering genes, and downregulate the negative ones that compromise our immune system, that lead to free radicals and really harmful things happening to us. I went on a complete tangent there. Don't know where that came from, but I hope you appreciate it. Let's move on to the next question. Why do I struggle to trust others? Ooh. I don't know why I reacted that way, but yeah. Why do I struggle to trust others? Okay, well, let's start with the obvious and then dig it a bit deeper, shall we? People often struggle to trust others, and I learned this from Dr. Wayne Dyer. I don't know if you can see these books. You can't. It's on this. It's on this area here. Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of my role models, someone I really look up to. One of the people who really opened up my eyes to like having that open mindset, forgiveness, letting go of things that burden you, the importance of the vocabulary, how you communicate with yourself, the importance of being more spiritual and having faith. Dr. Wayne Dyer, what a beautiful soul, and was an incredible human being. Is an incredible human being because this is just our physical form that comes and goes during this transient, temporary kind of way of living. There are different dimensions, I'm sure. Anyways, we're not going to go down that path. Unless you ask me to, of course. Hint, hint. So why do I struggle to trust others? Dr. Wayne Dyer says this brilliantly. He says, we can only give what we have inside. So if you are used to seeing things and becoming angry and perceiving things negatively, then that's what you will live out and that's what you will attract in your life. And the same thing goes for trust. If you don't trust anyone in your life, then you are untrustworthy. You do not trust yourself. Maybe you feel like you are not disciplined. You don't believe that you will be resilient or persevere in your life, which is why you don't trust yourself. Maybe you've been inconsistent in areas in your life where you wanted to be consistent, and therefore you've lost that trust and that love. Therefore, that self-love has diminished. So I'm not saying trust everyone and become gullible and really extreme and really suggestible, even though suggestibility has its strengths as well. Another hint there. But, it leads to better health if there are a certain group. I learned this from, where's it gone? Here we go. The Chimp Paradox by Professor Stevens, a wonderful book. Definitely something that I advocate here. And this is the book of the episode, by the way. So I'll dive into that now and see if I can segue back nicely here. So in the Chimp Paradox, it's very much about understanding that we all have this reptilian primitive brain, the chimp, within that's existed for such a long period of time. It's very difficult to overcome this way of thinking, this very selfish, confined, fearful way of living, such as the reptilian brain, because it's primarily focused on living and staying safe, and therefore we tend not to take risks in anything that's different is seen as something to be avoided, and so on and so forth. And you can appease the chimp within the reptilian brain through 3 different methods and so on and so forth. We're not going to go into all this, but looking after it, reasoning with it, having an outlet for the reptilian brain, for that chimp within, having a way of expressing these emotions, and whether it be that negative thinking, whether it's expressed through anxiety, paranoia, anger, apprehension, jealousy, envy, or whatever it is, right? But it's a wonderful, wonderful book, and the reason why I brought that up is because part of Professor Stevens' book here talks about having a troop, and by troop it means having a certain amount of relationships, right? That you feel that where you have unconditional love, you feel like you belong to a certain group. Because when you have that, it's like a safety net. When you have unconditional love and you can trust others, whether it be familial members, friends, colleagues, whomever it might be to you, or even trusting yourself, when you feel like there's that level of trust, you feel like you are secure. And when you're secure in life, that's when you can overcome like negative emotions, selfish emotions, such as anger, selfishness, hopelessness, whatever it might be, okay? So why do you struggle to trust others? It could, and the main thing I wanted to share, and I learned this in a TED talk, which was brilliant, based on, again, science and research that was done, following, tracking people's lives over decades, and what they found is what makes people happy, what makes people live longer in their lives, is our relationships, the quality of our relationships, and that relates to having unconditional love for others, feeling like you can trust others, feeling as though you can trust yourself, and that's all about being disciplined, doing the things that you know you need to do, regardless of how your unconscious and the chimp within responds to these new things. It's about becoming bigger than yourself and thinking greater than how you feel, as Dr. Joe Dispenza shares. See? Why reading and learning is so crucial for us and our development and our progress and our level of consciousness as well, depending on what kind of books you read, of course. So yeah, you may struggle to trust yourself because you live in the ego. You are living in low energy frequencies. You are living in you are more matter than energy. You are more matter than anything that's like a wave or something that flows in life, such as electromagnetic fields and so on and so forth, which exists in all atoms in everything. So we struggle to trust others because we struggle to trust ourselves because we're living within the ego. And most people are living in chronic stress, which means they're living in chronic ego, we call it. Yeah, I just made that up just now. I like that. Chronic ego, which is all about things. We live in that material world, but the material world is very confined and limited because there are all sorts of things going in and out of our perceptions that we are oblivious to because of our conditioning, how we've taught ourselves to see, touch, taste, feel, smell. Yes, there we go, we got there. And all these sorts of things. So, yeah, why do we struggle to trust others? Because we're living within the constraints of form, our physical form. I am from here. I was born this way. These are my experiences. These are my beliefs. This is my culture. These are my political viewpoints. These are some of the places I've visited in my life. You know, these are people I'm not familiar with, and therefore they're the enemy. And this is how racism and all kinds of inequality brews and worsens because people live in the ego. And anything or anyone or any place that is deemed unfamiliar is seen as the enemy because it threatens our own existence. It threatens our own ego. It threatens our own identity because it's different. Anything unknown is to be feared. And really it's down to ignorance, not understanding that people, situations, circumstances, different places, different things in the world can have a completely different meaning if we attach different meaning to it. So, yeah, you could be struggling to trust others because of your own ego, because you are addicted to your way of living, because of your limited perceptions, because you're not present as much as you should be. Therefore, I advocate meditation. And yeah, greater reading and stimulating neuroplasticity and epigenetics. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit, I guess. So, as you know, our cells and our nucleus contains genes, okay? And these genes, partly, and it is important this part, but partly is determined by our genetics from our parents or our grandparents as well, right? So there are certain things that we inherit from them, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, sometimes physically, right? But that's not just it. There is epigenetics. Epigenetics is all about our lifestyles and anything external, but that also means our thinking and our emotions can upregulate certain genes and downregulate other genes, whether good or bad, depending on what those thoughts and what those emotions are. This is how people can create illness and pain through their thoughts alone. This is how people can recover and become more abundant and more growth oriented through their thoughts and their feelings. But not just that, based on your lifestyle, nutrition, whether you exercise, how you sleep, all of these factors influence how the brain and the body, your unconscious, operates. And things like your metabolism, your thyroid, your immune system, all these sorts of important systems within the body. So, yeah, I mean, epigenetics is crucial, and that links to neuroplasticity, because neuroplasticity is all about learning new things, experiencing new things, going outside of your comfort zone, outside and into the unknown, which is where we've been taught to be fearful of, unfortunately. And neuroplasticity kind of caters and is a catalyst for epigenetics, which can change your genes and adapt our DNA and become a different person over time because of our experiences, our thoughts, and obviously our actual genetics that we've inherited from our parents play a role in that as well. And so, yeah, I mean, those are just some of the things that I thought I should mention. Okay. What else shall we discuss? Well, the main thing I want us to really, really consider this week is the importance of letting go and trusting and having faith and accepting whatever happens. Now, by accepting, I'm not saying that if something really negative happens, that you just give up on whatever your goals are. That's not what I'm saying. Accepting means don't dwell on the problem. Take it how it is, whether it's an outcome that we desired or didn't want, and fashion a different way of accomplishing those things. It could be seeking help. It could be delegating something. It could be learning something new, developing a new skill. It could be rising to the occasion. It could be developing some kind of skill, neuroplasticity, for instance. And that's how we can really grow more. Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and so on. And I'm challenging us to be even more conscious and therefore be even more awakened and to start seeing above what we see. And that means looking beyond people's personalities. Okay? Because other people are more than that and we are more than that. We can't just judge something based on face value. You know, we can't just look at the world and see everything on this planet and take it for how it is and think that that's just reality, right? Because if we do that, we're in essence discriminating. We're discriminating against reality. We're discriminating against God, because God is everywhere. God is within us. God is within every single thing. God is in space. God is responsible for everything that we perceive and can perceive. So God is everywhere within the quantum field. And so I challenge us not to discriminate against reality by just seeing things for how they are. So seeing computers, seeing a table, seeing coffee, blah, 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 blah. Just as I say, don't judge people based on their behaviors and how they seem. We need to look beyond this. We need to look beyond ego characteristics, the identity, how people look, people's hair color, people's eye color, people's gender, people's preferences, people's choices. And we need to overcome. And I mentioned this about religion because this is quite a revelation I had recently. And it's that, you know, religion can be both a really positive or a very painful thing for us. For example, the many things that we associate with religion is that if you are good or bad, you'll go, if you're good, you go heaven. If you're bad, you need to atone for what you've done, you need, for your sins, and potentially go heaven, or you go to hell if you don't, right? So if you do bad things, if you sin, you go to hell, whatever that might mean, okay? And that's, I can understand that in terms of keeping society operating a certain way, ensuring that if there is an afterlife, that we live more peacefully and joyfully rather than suffering in hell for all of eternity. But I think there's more to religion. I think there is more to God, right? I believe that it's also believing in potentiality, believing that there's more out there. And that belief can be very humbling. It can make us very grateful. It can make us extremely appreciative and very loving. And it can make us more connected to all sorts of things, not just material things, but more connected to each other on a deeper level. So I study heart coherence. And something really interesting is that if we take control of our state of being, that means if we are able to self-regulate, if we're able to control our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, if we are able to maintain our composure, to remain calm, especially in stressful or difficult situations, then our brain and heart coherence operating simultaneously, congruently together, no dis-ease within, no internal resistance within, then we will be able to influence other people's states. It's now been programmed. Science is now able to show how our brainwave frequency our heart coherence as well, and this is to do with our heart rate variabilities, and that's to live a healthier life. But the way our heart operates and flows, if we're in a good state, if we're used to meditating, experiencing those elevated creative emotions such as gratefulness, love, appreciation, connectedness, whatever it is, that are joy, peace, laughter, smiling, whatever it is, if we experience these sort of things on a regular basis and experience deep peace within and great acceptance, and we flow with things in life more, and we don't associate with our ego, and we don't judge others, and we don't do, all these kind of egoic behaviors, then what will happen is we are able to influence how the brain and the heart operates within other people. Even if you're several feet away, people can feel, because when you're in that zone, when your heart is coherent and you are in control of your situation and you are able to regulate and remain calm no matter what's going on in the external, you will positively affect the state of being within other people. This is scientifically proven now. It's not just like aura and all these fancy woo-ha. This is real. And this is why people gravitate to others. And this is why people feel, sometimes you might meet someone and go, you know what, I just feel better when I'm around you. Not that you necessarily entertain me. I feel better when I'm around you. I feel relaxed. And this has been conducted. It's even been conducted with animals. For example, if you had a dog and you walked into that room, so say you were both stressed out, the dog was getting hungry or agitated or saw a stranger and wanted to bark at it, him or her, and you came in and you had a stressful day at work, the moment you sense each other's presence, the moment you sense presence, not see, sense presence, the person and the pet's heart coherence can change, and they can match one another, and they go from being frantic and crazy to being calm and operating and flowing and feeling good. And so what I'm saying to you is, if you want to influence others, your loved ones, your friends better, if you want to help people overcome any pain that they're going through in their lives, part of that is learning to become a leader. And by that I mean learning to be more conscious, learning to be more peaceful, more grateful, more appreciative in your life. And that will transfer and influence the state of others. That is incredibly profound. And we all have this inherent skill within us. And we are all responsible for what we experience and changing our habits. These subconscious patterns, we are responsible for changing that. No one else can change it. The more you look outside the external to change how you think and feel, the more suffering we're going to find, because it's very limited. The way you perceive things will be very limited, because it all starts within us. And we need to think greater than our environments. And that's what's going to enable us to change and change our state of being, and have that brain and heart coherence and become so more peaceful and connected, and feel connected to the universe and feel connected to that greater intelligence, that universal consciousness that's out there. That very consciousness that's causing your heart to pump over 2 gallons of blood every single minute. That's causing trillions of cells to be made every single second, and to get rid of trillions of cells simultaneously as well. All those chemical changes, all those metabolic functions that your brain and your body is able to do without your conscious awareness in the autonomic nervous system here, that's a beautiful thing. Something out there is able, that some kind of energy is out there that's able to make this happen for us. And that's why we need faith. And that's why we need to turn down the influence of the ego and learn to be more present in life and to be more like an active listener when you're having conversation with people, to be more focused, to be more meditative, to focus on your breathing. And part of developing this is to be more focused on individual tasks. And I know a lot of people who say, listen, I can multitask. They're actually doing yourself a massive, like in terms of your neural networks and your wiring and your habits, you're doing yourself a massive disservice if you are someone who lives in the fast lane, someone frantically. Even if you are a high achiever financially, for example, and you get things done, and you're always busy, and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you're handling that, and you set high standards there, and you're doing that, can cause a breakdown within, and it can cause dis-ease and therefore disease down the line because of how it down-regulates our helpful, empowering genes and up-regulates those negative ailment-inducing genes within as well. So pay attention to the energy that you have. Pay attention to the habits that you do on a daily basis. Challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone in the form of neuroplasticity. Do new things. Challenge yourself. Step outside of your comfort zone. Change your subconscious programs by experiencing more blissful brainwave states, such as alpha brainwave state, gamma brainwave state, and so on and so forth. Become more intelligent and increase the amount of neurons within the brain, and therefore create newer synaptical connections between existing neurons and also the new neurons that you make when you learn new things, whether it be through reading or watching things or going on a course or going to a workshop or a seminar and learning that way. Because that's what enables your brain to change. That's what enables you to conceive new possibilities. When you conceive new possibilities, you have new thoughts. When you have new thoughts, that creates new results. Then you start to believe in those results. And then you start to challenge yourself. And you just keep improving in your life by setting higher and higher standards and having faith and embracing emotionally that with which you want to achieve in your life. And these are some really beautiful, amazing things that you might want to consider moving forward. So, that will bring today's podcast to a close. Please get in contact. If you have any other questions that you want to share, that you want to put forth, I'm happy to answer them in these forms. You can get in contact with me on my Instagram pages, either AlexGem_power or AlexGem_body. That's what my Instagram page for my fitness and health and helping people get into the best mental and physical shape of their lives. Because we need to look after the body. You look after the body, you look after the mind, and vice versa. What's good for the heart is good for the brain, and vice versa as well. And yes, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're watching this video, you can find the channel. Just hit subscribe and turn on notifications as well. And you can also join my fitness YouTube channel as well. Just type in The Six Pack Mind with Alex Gem. Subscribe. I produce exercise workouts, home-based workouts in particular, without needing any equipment. HIIT workouts are some of my very favorites. Best for stimulating neuroplasticity, best for supporting a ketogenic lifestyle, best for increasing growth hormone, testosterone levels, which will help you to torch fat even more, burn more calories, and improve your metabolic rate, and yeah, make you more intelligent as well. That's what HIIT workouts can do. Go check those out, and you can see my meditation practices and follow my meditations either on this YouTube channel or that one as well. And a whole host of different teachings and things that I put out there. So you definitely will want to subscribe and keep learning. Challenge yourself, guys. It's all about being as present as you can be, putting things into perspective, and understanding that you can control your destiny. You can control your life. But you can't change your life if you're using the past to create your present moment and your future. You just cannot change. You are literally reliving the same sort of emotions every single day, and you will not be able to get new results and become even more joyous, peaceful, and happy if we're living in the past. So, yes, stay strong, and I'll catch you soon, guys. Have a good day.